Today, a conversation with St. John Mayor Don Darling, who is encouraging people to offer in the May municipal election, and could there be a book in his future? I'm Gary MacDonald. Welcome to the first episode of Gary Mac Unfiltered. Joining me today is St. John Mayor Don Darling. Now, Don Darling is not going to reoffer in the upcoming May municipal vote. However, he is on somewhat of a crusade, if you will, to encourage others to come forward and offer their names. Don Darling, tell me, why do you feel that it's important for you to be out there doing that?
Yeah, look, I think thanks for the question, Gary. Enhancing democracy to me, having voters engaged in their city, understanding the issues and why they matter. And I'm very concerned that 60%, more than 60% of voters in the last municipal election didn't vote. Didn't participate. What does that mean? Likely that they don't see themselves being represented in the municipal government. We have COVID upon us. What are the impacts going to be in this election? Is voter turnout going to go down? So that's one piece. The next piece is having a council that represents the community. When I talk about diversity and attracting a wide range of skilled candidates to run for council, people think I'm talking about more women candidates. And of course I am, but I'm talking about cultural diversity. I'm talking about age, representative of the different demographics in our community. So attracting a wide range of candidates, skilled candidates to run a diversity of gender, cultural diversity, and so on and so forth. And then lastly, I'm concerned, Gary, about what happens in elections where candidates tell candidates, whatever the citizenry, whatever they want to hear. I promise to blank. And I'm concerned about that. And I think that we have to fact check through this election.
You have used social media over the last almost 5 years now, and it's had its good points and its rough points along the way. A few times you took breaks from social media, and you made no bones about you just needed to get away from it. Did you find, though, that during that time, the pluses of using social media outweighed the negatives?
I've had countless citizens talk to me about how they have, they didn't understand their city the way they understand their city today. So I think it has, the pluses have outweighed the negatives, but on those negative days, it was hard to see the pluses.
So what advice would you give to someone who is actually thinking about offering, whether it's at the council level, for the mayor's chair? What kind of advice would you offer based on your experience? Because you came into it as a political newbie, and I remember having a conversation with you prior to the election and getting to know you. What would you say to them?
I made a promise to myself, and I spoke often to citizens about it. I was going to live my values and my principles. If you don't like what you see, and you don't like what I'm talking about, growth and managing our finances, and I didn't quite understand the level of need for reform then that I understand today. Then don't vote for me. So my first advice would be figure out who you are as a candidate and what's important to you, and stick to those values. Don't make promises that you can't keep. That would be a bit of advice. I think you have to engage with the community. I'm surprised today at the level of I'm having candidates ask me, do I really need to be on social media? And my answer is, well, I guess you don't. But I think there's an expectation from citizens that we are going to engage with the citizenry where they are, and people are on social media today. I think the other advice I would give, Gary, set some boundaries. It's interesting to me that there are some that believe that because of my title as mayor, I give up any right to decorum, that I give up any right to privacy, that I should be on call 24/7. So I've created that perhaps a bit, because if you message me and I'm still up at midnight, I'm going to respond. So I pride myself on being engaged. I pride myself on not shying away from the tough conversations. But I don't see how a candidate is successful as a council member without being engaged in social media.
And what would you say to somebody who's thinking about offering as far as that side of the job is concerned? I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to weigh heavily on a lot of people, and they're going to say, "Well, why should I? Why should I
Yeah.
bother?"
Yeah. Look, I think it depends on two things. First of all, I was having a chat with one of our senior leaders a few weeks ago, and they said to me, and I won't disclose their name, but they said to me, Don, the interesting thing is that next mayor is going to have it far easier than you have, because of the hard work, because of the honest, gritty scrap. I'm a scrappy guy, because of the decisions that this council has made to lay the foundation. And I say, great, that's wonderful. Um, and I would say that um, if you're passionate, if you're empathetic, if you care deeply like I do, then you better put some boundaries in place. You better have a small group of people that you can call any day, any time of the day for help. And I'll make that offer to the next mayor. Absolute. I'll be there for them. But I'll also be there if I see things that I think are not in the best interest of the community. So boundaries. Surround yourself with a small group of people that are going to be caring and give you good advice, and you will not make everybody happy. I have never had any delusion that I could make everybody happy, but you need to remind yourself of that. And I would lastly say, Gary, that we often hear from those opposed to something, and remind yourself every day that you serve 70,000 people, not the 25 people screaming and yelling.
You've gone 5 years. You had an extra year thrown into the mandate because of the pandemic, and I recall back a number of years ago when the terms went from 3 years to 4 years. In sitting here personally watching what's evolved over the last year with this extension, I'm beginning to wonder, should the term actually be 5 years? When you look at running a municipality, you're running a business, a corporation, and most businesses operate on a minimum of a 5-year business plan. The
Mhm.
city has recently embarked on a 10-year financial plan. Do you think that maybe that's something that's part of the municipal reform process, that we should be looking at the terms?
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to be included necessarily. We're still scoping out what municipal reform looks like, Gary. But enhancing governance, absolutely. Term length, term limits, financial disclosures, job descriptions. Like, I have to tell you, and I don't know how to say this without sounding harsh. I'm shocked at some of the people that believe they have the capacity to do this job. I spent 20 years in the private sector as a senior leader in an organization, as an owner of one of Atlantic Canada's 50 best managed companies. I was on national level boards. I had an extensive background, and this has been the most challenging job I've ever had. So I think, along with term lengths, we have to have a very honest conversation about the roles, about the compensation, about the expectations that citizens have for their elected officials. Because the types of plans that councils develop and stick to. Because again, as I said earlier, there was no excuse for this corporation being in the shape that it was in. So we have to define what success looks like, and we have to wrap around all of the governance components to go along with that. So I think it should be discussed along with a number of other issues and items.
Now, we know that you have a great interest in podcasting, and you've launched your own podcast. And do you want to get that a plug right now while we're talking about that?
So it's really about having courageous and deep conversations. So it's dig deep, having conversations. I'm going to be branding that with my own name. We're only a few in, but we've got about a dozen in the calendar to do. So that's about having meaningful conversations with interesting people, Gary. So I am excited about that. So far so good. We've had some pretty good take up on the first couple.
And what's beyond that for Don Darling?
Yeah, so I'm still working through that. So no scoop for you there today, but I do promise to come back and chat with you about it. I will say that I'm humbled by, had a couple of calls again today from organizations and whether it be board level opportunities or corporations big and small that are interested in Don Darling, that want to see me involved with their organizations. And but what I would say is that I have spent an extensive amount of time, working on what is next for me, and I think people are going to be surprised. Frankly, I think what people believe that that I'm going to end up somewhere. I think they'll be surprised when I'm ready to give that detail to the community, and I will. But it will include a component, Gary, of staying engaged and involved in the prosperity, sustainability of this community. So, you mentioned the 5-year term. It has been a grind. I'm very proud of the work that we've done, but it shouldn't be this hard. It should not be this difficult to affect positive change in a community at a municipal level, provincial level, and federal level. And I think we have to reflect on how hard we make it for elected officials to make change. So who knows? Maybe there'll even be a book in my future, Gary.
All right. Don Darling, thank you very much for taking the time out to chat with us today.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you for joining me for the first episode of Gary Mack Unfiltered. Be sure to subscribe to our News YSJ YouTube channel so you don't miss new episodes. And visit our newsysj.ca website for news and information. I'm Gary MacDonald. Thanks for watching.